Read the docs. Read the docs. Every time you open Reddit or scroll through some forum post about how to start something, you're guaranteed to see this message. Read the docs. Why is this advice so common? And more importantly, if I'm new to Godot and scripting, should I also be starting by reading the documentation? Today, I wanted to share a little bit of my own perspective and chime in on this topic. Maybe you guys have experienced something like this too. One of the main reasons I started using Godot was because the documentation was amazing. But just because it's amazing doesn't mean you have to start there. I'm going to talk about the 2 ways you can start and the way I think you should start. There's pros and cons to both sides, and I'll go over them. Then we'll hop over to documentation, and I'll show you some that I think everyone needs to have in their back pocket. Let's go. I remember the first internship I had. I had stars in my eyes, looking to do something that was going to change the world. So there I was, all nervous and excited about what my first project was going to be. Was I going to design something, maybe work on a new tool? My supervisor walks by and drops a 1,000-page manual on my desk. Dust is flying around everywhere, and he gives me that look. And then just goes off on his way. That was a moment I will never forget. This is where you start by going through and reading the Godot documentation. The Godot Docs is a super helpful resource containing many different sections that the Godot community has wonderfully put together. It's really well written, it's easy to put in requests to add or modify information. There's a ton of knowledge out there at your fingertips. I wanted to start with this because for many, it's the go-to or de facto method of learning. And I think it's fair to say it's a little bit more of a traditional method. By reading the documentation, you'll try to get a holistic understanding or a big overview of what Godot has to offer at any given time. You get to see the overview of tools and what you might be able to leverage. And that is the pro of reading the documentation. If you can sit through it, you'll have a good overview of the many tools and features that Godot has to offer. But the downside is that even if you're motivated, it's challenging to read any document for any extended amount of time. And I'm not talking about TikTok brain or attention span either. It's just a tough and tall task. Starting with anything else. This is where you start with anything else. Following a blog, watching a tutorial, starting with your favorite YouTube series. The downside to this method is that you haven't read the docs. You don't know all of what Godot has to offer, so you can't make any real choices or trade-offs. You're just following what the tutorial is saying. You might not know that you could have done something a different way, or that there is a better way to accomplish what you're trying to do. But I think that's totally fine, because the upside is so much better than the downside. The best part about this is that you get to start right away. You get to start using Godot to make a game. And I'm a big fan of that. Learning by doing. And funny enough, as you get started, you're going to run into problems. Things you don't quite understand. And that's the ringer. Anytime we have a question about how something that we're learning works, the first thing we need to check is the documentation. We don't have to read it before we start, but we have to read it as we're building our game, as we're running into issues. Having or developing a toolset is very important, and I would think of the Godot documentation as one of the most important tools in your kit. I want to briefly go over a couple different options on how you can navigate over to the doc as you're using Godot. Then I'll go into what I think are some pages you might want to keep in your back pocket. So, my favorite way to browse the docs is to bring it up in a web browser. I like this option as it's simple and it's what I'm used to. But if you're looking for quicker access, you can bring up tooltips by hovering over keywords or functions inside Godot. If you control-click, then you'll open up the associated page as well. And finally, when clicking nodes, you can use this button in the inspector to bring up the documentation. I bet there's some hockey to bring up the docs as well, but out of these options, I primarily just search on the web browser or control-click when scripting. The GDScript reference page. Now this is a page filled with the goodies that you should definitely reference. Whenever you're a little bit confused about navigating GDScript, there's this super handy keyword table that will quickly get you to any relevant bit of information that you need. Do you need to brush up on classes? Then just click right here. Or maybe you want to see the different ways you can start a for loop. I always find myself opening this back up, even if it's for pure convenience. Definitely top of the list. Check it out as you need it. The next page is going to be string manipulation with formatting strings. Unless your game is completely made of pictures, you might find yourself showing the player information using text. Formatting strings to show information is important, and you can quickly check how to use multiple placeholders or see if you need to use a different format specifier. It goes without saying, but this information becomes significantly more useful when, for example, you're using a label and you're not able to show information in the way you are trying to show. Say you formatted your string to show a variable and the variable is a float, as opposed to an integer. And because of that, what's getting shown in your UI has too many digits past the decimal. That would be a great time to check out this page. You're likely managing information in your game using simple data structures like arrays or dictionaries. If you haven't though, no worries. When the day comes and you decide to work on an inventory or put together a list of skills for your character, you're going to find out that you need to order that information or that data together in one place in a structured format. That's where a simple data structure like an array or a dictionary could come in. This is one of my favorite pages to visit because there's a ton of methods to check out that you need to learn for data manipulation. While the methods themselves are self-explanatory, managing data is crucial, and we're all going to be doing a bunch of it. And to help visualize why I bring this page up so often, let's think for a sec about what we can put inside our array. If we put items into our array, say it's an inventory, I can find a function such as shuffle to shuffle my bag. Or I can reverse the order of items in my inventory. Or I can pick one item at random. It all depends on what's inside, but if I'm using this data structure, I have access to all these ways, all these functions to manipulate my data. Of all the pages, this is probably the one that I have opened up the most and referenced the most. Now I want to change gears slightly and talk about the first 3 sections in the Godot docs, about getting started and the manual. Definitely look in these every once in a while to see if there's something that piques your interest. There's some cool information in there for sure, some tutorials, best practices, and more. Not all of these things will be important to you, but it can be fun or an informational read as you learn more about Godot. The more you learn and the better you get, the more the documentation will be applicable and useful for you. And the final thing I wanted to touch on is finding information that you don't quite know. What if, for instance, I wanted to find the distance between 2 points? Sure, you can write your own function to do this, but maybe Godot has something built in already. But you can't find it easily. If you're not finding it in the GDScript reference page but you think the function should exist, likely it's a method of a class that you need to leverage. I know you typically find distance between points being vector2s in Godot. So by searching the vector2 class, I'm going to see that if I define a variable as of type vector2, I can use this function distance2 to find the distance to another point. Clear as mud? And that's going to be it for this video. Hope you all enjoyed. Thanks to all the channel members, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace.